It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
G'day, this is Dr. Justin Coulson, the founder of happyfamilies.com.au, dad to 6 daughters, husband to 1 wife, and the parenting expert and co-host on Channel 9's Parental Guidance, also the host of this podcast, the Happy Families podcast. Thank you so much for listening and allowing me into your life to hopefully be useful in making your family happier. Right now, school holidays in Queensland, which means that I'm doing my best to spend as much time in the sunshine with Kylie and the girls as I can. Today, a lightning round with one of the most famous authors in the world, Daniel H. Pink. Dan Pink is the author of 5 New York Times bestsellers, including his latest book, which I absolutely love, The Power of Regret, and my other favorite of Dan's is Drive. Dan has won 1 billion awards, had his books translated into 42 languages, and has sold literally millions of copies of his books around the world. He lives in Washington, D.C. with his family. And Dan joins me for a lightning round. Delighted to have you here, Dan. You know the rules. Quick, simple, snappy answers, a whole bunch of questions.
All right.
Let's dive into it.
I approach this with some, I fear I could have some regrets about agreeing to do this, but lay it on me.
Tell me how many kids you have and how old they are.
I have 3 kids. I have a 19-year-old, a 23-year-old, and a 26-year-old.
And do you have a favorite child, Dan?
No, I do not.
Are you saying that because you have to say that, or is it really true?
No, I truly do not. It reminds me a little bit of people ask me whether I have a favorite book, and I try to explain that I don't have a favorite book of mine. Because I love all my books in the way I love all my children.
Okay, well, that was my next question, so that's counted.
Okay, great. So so this is a real rapid fire because I'm knocking off
questions that haven't been asked yet.
With one answer.
Love it.
Yeah.
Next question: who do you love most? And I think we can draw on some science here. Who do you love most? Your wife or your kids?
Yes.
Oh, very good. Ideal number of kids?
Whatever for me, whatever people want. I don't think there is an ideal number. For some people, it's like crazy people like you. It's a half dozen. For a sensible person like me, it's 3. For many sensible people, it's 0.
Favorite podcast, Dan, or podcasts if you can't narrow it down to one?
Besides this one, I would say I like the Happiness Lab by Laurie Santos. I like Hidden Brain with Shankar Vedantam. And I'm a big fan of something called Audm, AUDM, which is audio articles from magazines.
Okay, I'm going to look that one up. The other 2 are on my list every week. I love listening to them as well. You've done a lot of research in the psychological sciences. How do you rate yourself as a parent?
Average. I think I'm in the median. I think that half the world is better than me and half the world is beneath me.
Dan, what's something absolutely great that your parents did that you've tried to continue in your dadding?
That I tried to continue. That's interesting because the best thing my parents did was let me go to the library. And so I lived in a community that had a very robust public library system, fortunately for me. And that was a transformative part of my childhood. Now, and I think what I've done with our kids is sort of try to let them explore. It doesn't necessarily mean in a public library because we're now in the world of the internet, but that leave them alone and let them explore whatever strikes their fancy at a particular moment in their childhood.
One of the disadvantages of a lightning round is sometimes I really want to dig and poke and prod, but I'm going to leave that be because it's such a wonderful answer. A fun one. Who's the better parent, you or your wife?
Wife. Not even close.
Yeah, what's the hardest thing about being a parent?
Seeing your kids struggle, even though you know the struggle is ultimately going to be good for them.
Yeah, that is hard. That is hard. Imagine you could spend an hour with your children at any age of their life, Dan. You could go back and hold them as newborns for an hour, or you could have them as 50-year-olds or anything in between. What age would you choose to spend an hour with your kids and why?
It's a great question. I would say probably, first of all, I would take, if that offer is on the table, I'll take any age in the past. Okay. So I'm not even going to negotiate that one if that's a real possibility. But yeah, if you push me to the wall, I would say about age 4 or 5 for all of my kids, because around age 4 or 5, kids are able to really express themselves and are just so incredibly and beautifully unabashed. So I would like to see that.
Dan, I've asked this question of so many people. That's my favorite answer in both cases. But I love that you said any age. That's melted my heart. You've become my favorite interviewee ever.
I'm sorry to hear that.
What's the ultimate joy for you as a parent?
Seeing your kids become independent.
What's the correct age for kids to have a cell phone? I get this question all the time. Drives me crazy.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question because when my kids were kids, cell phones were evolved over time. So I think we had in our house very different answers for different kids, partly because of how important cell phones were.
Yeah, so they weren't ubiquitous.
So I'll make up a number. 10. You got to have double digits before you get a cell phone.
Okay, you're the lowest of everyone I've ever interviewed, Dan. My estimation of you
is that right?
Yeah, my estimation's just dropped of you again. I'm so sorry. What are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? I am, you know what? Curiously enough, it's about kids. Literally, it's the galleys of a book coming out next year called A Minor Revolution. It's by a professor here in the United States. It's about sort of how we should reorient public policy toward prioritizing kids. That what we don't do enough in our public policy, especially here in the States, is put kids at the center of our public policy. And if we do that, over time, that takes care of all these other kinds of problems that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, I say it all the time. Society is not kid-friendly. What's your children, now that they're older, what's your children's favorite thing to do with you?
Depends on the kid. I think that our favorite thing as a family, all 5 of us, is just to eat together. We sometimes have the funniest conversations when we're just gathered around eating. Not like going on some fancy vacation or anything like that, but just simply gathering around the table and seeing what crazy stuff comes up.
When you think about what's in the future, what are you looking most forward to as a parent, Dan?
It's weird. I guess what I'm looking forward to is being a spectator cheering on the sidelines as I watch our kids find their path.
If you could go back to you as a young dad, you've written a book called The Power of Regret. So this is
a young dad.
Yeah, this is the perfect question for you. Go back to you as a young dad. You're having one of those really tough moments. You're inexperienced. You've got these kids running around. You don't know what to do. What advice would you give yourself?
Freak out way less. Most of this stuff doesn't matter. Don't get so blown out of proportion about like small things about something spilling or someone not being ready or that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah, great stuff. And the last question of our lightning round, Daniel Pink. What's been your biggest win as a dad?
That my kids still talk to me, even though they're moving on in their adult lives.
I kind of want to say that's a really low bar, but at the same time, having a daughter who's moved out and married and a second one who's in the process of moving out as well, I actually get what you mean there. There's something so delightful about when they come back, right? That they want to come back.
Right. I agree with that.
Dan Pink, thanks so much for joining me on a Happy Families Lightning Round.
What a pleasure. I enjoyed it.
The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rollon from Bridge Media, and Craig Bruce is our executive producer. If you want more information about making your family happier or about the upcoming Happy Families Hot Mess Summit, visit us at happyfamilies.com.au or check out our Facebook page, Dr. Justin Coulson's Happy Families.